The president announcing today that he is lifting sanctions on Turkey, claiming a big win for what a lot of people are calling a foreign policy disaster. And as his own top envoy says, Turkish-backed forces likely committed war crimes.
Early this morning, the government of Turkey informed my administration that they would be stopping combat. I've therefore instructed the Secretary of the Treasury to lift all sanctions imposed on October 14th in response to Turkey's original offensive. This was an outcome created by us, the United States, and nobody else. Now people are saying, wow, what a great outcome. Congratulations.
Perfect person to talk about this. Fareed Zakaria here, the host of Fareed Zakaria GPS. Okay, good evening. Listen, he's taking a victory lap. I mean, bipartisan condemnation on this. Didn't he set this whole foreign policy debacle in motion? How is he declaring a victory?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, when he said this is an outcome produced by the United States, he's right. And the outcome is this. You had a stable situation in that part of Syria where the United States, with a small number, a few hundred troops, was maintaining an enclave for itself, a base where it could essentially fight ISIS and people like that. It was maintaining stability and support for the Kurds. It was maintaining a barrier between the Kurds and the Turks. So it was basically created a very stable situation and given the U.S. an easy way to go and strike ISIS if it needed to at very low cost, right? He upended the entire situation. The outcome that he is now lauding is that you have had 250,000 people displaced. You've had Kurds fleeing. You've had unquestionably war crimes committed. You've had the United States have to airlift its troops out, destroy its own weapons caches so that they don't fall into enemy lines. Meanwhile, Turkey and Russia have carved that part of Syria up for themselves. The United States is now completely absent. So you look at that and you think, if that's a foreign policy victory, I'd love to see what a failure looks like.
It's a disaster, right?
Yeah, look, there's an argument about getting out of Syria. That's a complicated issue. But the way in which he handled this, look at just the thing with Turkey right now. He threatened the Turks and said, don't go in. They went in. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm going to impose sanctions on you if you go in. They go in and do what they wanted to. The Turks stopped their military action just because they had finished, they had accomplished their goals. And Trump declares victory and says, all sanctions are lifted. What Donald Trump is now revealing to the world about himself is he's a paper tiger. He never actually follows through on any of his threats. The sanctions against Turkey were toothless. The threats against Iran have been toothless. The threats against North Korea have been toothless. He's very good at the kind of braggadocio and the bravado on the podium, but he never follows through. So the Turks were told, this is a red line, do not go in. They went in. He said, we're not going to send the army, but we're going to put sanctions on. The sanctions lasted, 5 days?
Right, if that long, yeah. The Dallas Morning News is reporting tonight that Republican Texas Senator John Cornyn said in a call to reporters, quote, if Turkey was planning on coming into northern Syria and trying to ethnically cleanse the Kurds and U.S. troops were caught in the middle, I am not completely convinced that it was a bad idea to get them out of harm's way. The Kurds are our allies. Is this a link that the president's supporters, his apologists, that they are going through to have to defend his policy?
Well, it misses the point you made at the start, which was that we began this whole process. Yes, once you're in the middle of a free-for-all and the Turks are firing on the Kurds, should American troops be in the middle? No, but the point is we created this conflict by signaling to the Turks we would. Turkey has wanted to do this for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Ash Carter, the former defense secretary, said on my program, we used to get these calls all the time from Erdogan, and we would just manage it. You get both sides to kind of agree to stay in their corners. Erdogan, the Turkish president, must not have believed his luck. He did one of these routine phone calls badgering the Americans, and the president says, yes, all right, we'll withdraw all troops.
What if the president said, listen, without the conflict that happened over the last couple of days, we could not have reached this deal, that the conflict was needed, the lives needed to be lost?
Well, for 5 years, you had more stability than you have in that part of Syria. You had an American presence to be able to fight ISIS, all at virtually no cost. So I don't understand. Yes, it's true that you can only get a ceasefire after you've had fighting, but what was the fighting in aid of?
Right.
You know?
Well, he's saying that he did this because he wants to stop endless wars. And I'm just wondering if the fact of the matter will be, maybe, people will hear this and they'll say, oh, well, it's a promise that the president made, promises kept.
Well, you know, it's certainly fair that he doesn't like endless wars, but there wasn't a war going on in that part of Syria. We were actually maintaining the peace. And, you know, part of what Trump has turned this into is a generalized attack on America having a presence anywhere.
In a sense, right?
Right, yeah. Exactly. We precipitated a mini skirmish, which then just ended. But he's turned this into a generalized attack on America being anywhere in the world. And, you know, look, the United States has sometimes overextended itself, has done a lot of bad things, but in a lot of parts of the world, American forces are what keep the peace. America's word is what maintains stability. American support is what has upheld democracy and the rule of law. And to throw that all away because there were a few hundred troops in there. This is the extraordinary thing. This was such a small use of American power. Small, effective, limited. You know, these troops are going to go home to Fort Bragg or Fort Leavenworth or someplace. We're still going to pay for them.
But does he believe that, or is that what he's saying? Is that what's really behind it, him wanting to bring that?
What does Donald Trump believe, really? Do we know, other than in his own...
He is downplaying reports of ISIS prisoners escaping Kurdish jails as Turkey moved in. But just an hour earlier, this is his own envoy for Syria painting a much grimmer picture. Watch this.
There were a few that got out, a small number, relatively speaking, and they've been largely recaptured.
We'd say that the number is now over 100. We do not know where they are.
So who's right?
Well, of course, the ambassador is right. You know, the point is, it's not even what's happened in the past. Here's the problem. What we do know about ungoverned spaces in the Middle East is that bad guys do come there. The United States tends to be target number one. So it's quite likely that in the future, in one of these ungoverned spaces, since we've withdrawn and it is more chaotic, you're going to get some group of bad guys who are going to have plans to attack America or Americans. And here's the problem. We won't be able to use the Kurds to do the fighting. American men and women will have to go in because we had this great infantry that we used in combination with our air power and intelligence. They would do the fighting, which made a lot of sense because they knew the lay of the land, they spoke the language, they were not seen as occupiers, but we can't use them anymore. So the next time this happens, because of what Trump had, look at the last 20 years, right?
Go on,
because of what Donald Trump has done, it's more likely that American men and women will have to go and do the hand-to-hand fighting.